Ethan, you're always so cold, so sure of yourself. You act like you can never be wrong. But do you have any idea how much pressure that puts on me? Being with you is like climbing a mountain with no peak. I'm just so tired. Jake might not have anything, but he'll lie on the grass with me and look at the stars. He spent time with me, enjoying the simple things. Nora Lynn's idea of the simple things was shacking up in a rundown apartment in the worst part of town. The sprawling high-rise condo I bought for her, the luxury car, the Hermes bags, the diamond rings, none of it could compare to a bowl of instant ramen from him. I hired a top-tier cleaning service that I paid a fortune for, and she found fault with everything they did. Jake mops his own floor, and she calls him a king who pampers her. If you love the simple life so much, why not go work a food truck? Let's get a divorce. I cut straight to the point of our meeting. I had clawed my way up from a scholarship kid in a dead-end town to a VC with a 7-figure salary. I didn't have time for a melodrama. Besides, she came from an ordinary family herself. She grew up on the simple things. Who was she kidding, pretending to be some fallen angel? I slid a divorce agreement across the table. She glanced at it, and her face went pale. You're leaving me with nothing? Let's be professional, I said. There's no legal concept of leaving someone with nothing in a no-fault state. You've spent every dime of my $1 million annual salary for years. Our joint savings account is right here. $2,200. You can have it all. The condo is mortgaged to the hilt. If you want it, you can buy out the loan yourself. She stared at me, her eyes wide with disbelief. Did you ever even love me? That's a meaningless question. I pushed another document toward her. Take a look at this. Option 1. You sign the divorce papers, and you can take all the luxury crap you bought. Option 2. We stay married, and this $30 million debt becomes our shared marital liability. She cheated on me. The fact that I wasn't setting her up to be saddled with that debt was the last ounce of respect I had for our marriage. She didn't appreciate the gesture. She slapped the papers off the table. Don't think I don't know about the side companies you've started. The ones pulling in tens of millions a year. And this is how you dismiss me. She was right, of course. I had several side hustles and investment projects, but the profits were all under my parents' names. What did that have to do with her? When she was my wife, I could provide for her. When she wasn't, I could naturally take it all back. Any rational adult knows that money, not love, is paramount. That sounds harsh, but it's the simple, unvarnished truth. Of course, if she could find happiness eating ramen in a tenement building, then I wish her all the best. I held up my hands. You don't have a choice. The person who cheats doesn't get to make demands. But fine, I'll give you a third option. We take this to court. You know the outcome will be exactly the same. Except, well, you probably can't even afford a lawyer. Her pride was her weakness. Seeing I was dead serious, she had no choice but to compromise. She signed a first agreement. You'll regret this. I wouldn't. But on the drive to the courthouse, Jake texted her. I don't know what he said, but Nora suddenly lunged for the steering wheel. Crunch. God damn it, I regret it. I really, really regret it. Next life, I'm staying as far away from that crazy bitch as possible. Ethan, over here, pass it to me. A teammate's shout snapped me back to reality. I was on a basketball court. I jumped, launching the ball in a high arc. It soared over the defenders, over their outstretched hands, and swished cleanly through the net. Whoa, the crowd erupted in cheers. Three-pointer. Damn, let's go again. I'm done. I've got to get back to studying, I said, shaking my head. I turned down the snacks offered by a few girls, grabbed my towel and water bottle, and walked off the court. I glanced at the time on my phone. One moment, I was in a car crash caused by Nora grabbing the wheel. Now I was reborn. 10 years in the past, 3 months before the SATs. Nora and I were childhood sweethearts. Our grandfathers had been colleagues and neighbors for decades. Our families were practically kin. But in our freshman year of high school, Nora's parents divorced and quickly remarried. She ended up living with her grandparents. My parents, feeling sorry for her, treated her like a second daughter. I'd always had a crush on her. My plan was to confess after our college applications were in, go to the same university, and get married someday. But in my past life, right around this time, a complication arose. Nora's dad remarried, and his new wife had a 6-year-old son who was the spitting image of him. From that moment on, Nora became rebellious. The pressure of studying for the SATs became too much. She started hanging out with a rough crowd and got cornered by some local punks. Jake played the hero, rescuing her. It was love at first sight. She started skipping class to ride around on the back of his motorcycle, making noise all over town. I couldn't stand by and watch. I told her grandparents, who staged a hunger strike to force her back onto the right path. Eventually, things went according to my original plan. We ended up at universities in the same city, got married after graduation, and stayed together until she reconnected with Jake. She said she was tired. Was I not? Ever since we got married, she hadn't worked a single day. The wedding, the mortgage, all our living expenses, I covered everything. I worked myself to the bone, pulling all-nighters, closing deals. She spent her days shopping, at the salon, at the spa, buying luxury goods. Once, I came home from a client dinner, having drunk so much my stomach was bleeding, and she complained the smell of alcohol was disturbing her beauty sleep and made me sleep in the guest room. At Christmas, my parents wanted us to come home, but she said the holiday travel rush was too much and she didn't want to go back to that sad place. Yet she sent her own parents tens of thousands of dollars in gifts. While I suggested my parents come stay with us, she said she needed her independent space. Thinking back, I wasn't blameless in how the marriage ended. As the song goes, I gave her too much freedom and she kept pushing my boundaries. I knew what she wanted, but life isn't a fairy tale. She wasn't a princess, and I wasn't a prince. And even if I were, a prince only offers a worthless kiss. Try asking him for the throne and see what happens. I, for one, couldn't give her that. Nora and I were in the same class. I was in the top 100 of our year. She was barely average in our homeroom. In my past life, if I hadn't forced her to grind through practice tests, she wouldn't have even gotten into a decent state school. She ended up at a top-tier university, but she never once thanked me. She just said I nearly drove her crazy. Fine. This time, I wouldn't push her. I pushed myself. I was getting into Harvard. With my grades, if I really applied myself, I had a shot. Back in the classroom, her seat was empty. Her desk mate saw me and asked, "Where's Nora?" "Don't know. Don't ask me." I sat down and pulled out a practice test. My own desk mate and the guy in front of him were exchanging secretive, shifty glances. They were my two best friends. "What's up with you two?" My desk mate, Chris, scratched his head and nudged the guy in front. "You tell him." The other guy grit his teeth, pulled out his phone, and tapped the screen. "See for yourself." It was a picture sent from God knows who. The subjects were Nora and Jake. The background was the wooded area behind the school. They were locked in a passionate kiss. My expression remained flat. "When was this taken?" Chris answered, 5 minutes ago." "Oh." I took out my own phone, deleted and blocked Nora from every contact list and social media app. Then I lowered my head and started on the test. Chris and the other guy stared, incredulous. "You're not mad? You want us to go beat the crap out of Jake?" I didn't even look up. "Are you insane? They're dating. What's it got to do with us? If you got time to waste, do some more problems." College admissions is a battlefield. A single point is a dividing line. 1 point can put you ahead of 10,000 other people. All right, stop preaching. You sound like the principal." They muttered to each other, constantly glancing at me, unable to believe I was truly unfazed. But I was. The next period was a study hall. I tore through 3 full practice exams, finally starting to get back into the groove of the high school grind. I didn't stop until school was over and all the other students had left. My dad called to see where I was, and only then did I break out of my study-induced frenzy. Looking up, I saw it was raining outside. No wonder he couldn't pick me up. He handed me a rain jacket. "Son, studying is important, but your health is more important." I put it on, got into the passenger seat, and leaned my head against his shoulder. "I know, Dad. My parents ran a small fruit stand. They worked so hard to get me into a top high school, then into a good college. I made it into a big firm and was earning a lot of money, but I barely had time to see them. We couldn't even spend Christmas together. They must have been so disappointed." Overcome with guilt, I wrapped my arms around his sturdy back. When we got to our duplex, the door to Nora's house was open. Her grandparents saw me alone and looked surprised. "Where's Nora?" My dad had asked the same question on the way home. She was a girl, so it wasn't proper for us to ride together in my dad's old sedan. Whenever it rained, we'd take a taxi. It wasn't expensive, but she never once said thank you, just took my paying for it for granted. It's laughable that I never noticed before. I don't know. I was studying late. I didn't see her. Nora's grandmother frowned. "She went to school with you. Why weren't you looking out for her?" "What was I, her keeper?" "I'm a student," I said, my tone sharp. "I have to study. I don't have time to watch her every second. If you're that worried, you should tie her to your hip so she can't run off." My dad tugged my arm and was about to apologize to Mrs. Lynn, but I pushed him inside. "I'm starving. Can you make some ravioli?" Once inside, I didn't care what expressions her grandparents had on their faces. I slammed the door shut with a loud thud. Before, our families were incredibly close. That lasted until Nora and I got married. I had just closed a massive deal and ridden a market wave, earning my first big bonus, around $3 million. My grandpa let it slip to her grandpa over drinks. Immediately, her family started pressuring us to get married, with the outrageous demand of a $250,000 gift to them. Where we were from, nobody did that. A token gift of 10 or 20,000 was the norm. But I loved Nora, and I had the money, so I agreed. I was young, a little arrogant for my sudden success, and I didn't notice how unhappy it made my grandpa. On the wedding day, her family suddenly upped the ante, demanding another $50,000 cash gift for Nora's little brother. My parents lost it. The wedding was almost called off. That incident became a sore spot for Nora, and she held a grudge against my parents ever since. As for the $250,000, she left it all with her family to buy her brother a house. After that, my grandfather's high blood pressure got worse and worse. Less than 3 months later, he died of stroke. I couldn't accept it. It was only then that my grandma told me the truth. Mr. Lynn had deliberately gotten my grandpa drunk to get the information out of him. Decades of friendship. All bullshit. I played the fool for them because I loved Nora. Now that I didn't, they were just a couple of greedy old people. I'd say whatever I wanted to them. Inside, I took off my shoes. My dad glared at me. What's wrong with you? Why were you so rude today? I was done with the Lynns. I pulled out my phone and showed him the picture Chris had sent me of Nora and Jake kissing. My dad's jaw dropped. He was furious. That girl. I deleted the picture. She's not your girl. I'm your only child. From now on, just ignore her. If you don't, I'll get upset. My dad knew how much I used to like Nora. Worried I was heartbroken, he immediately said, Okay, I won't say another word. We're not related to them anyway. Don't take it to heart, son. There are plenty of fish in the sea. I nodded. Tell Mom and Grandma and Grandpa, too. I don't want to hear her name in this house again. Otherwise, what if I get sad and distracted from my studies? It wasn't that I was being cruel, but the older generation valued relationships deeply. I didn't want any more entanglement with the Lynns, so I had to make my position crystal clear. For our family, nothing was more important than my college applications. Right. Whatever you say, my dad said, nodding vigorously. I'll go make the ravioli. What kind do you want? How many? Cheese. 20. I dropped my backpack and went to take a shower. When I came out, my dad had a steaming bowl of cheese ravioli ready for me. My grandparents made them from scratch. It was my favorite food growing up, the most delicious and comforting taste in the world. In my previous life, because of the drama around my wedding, my grandfather died of anger, and my grandma passed away not long after. I never tasted it again. So I savored every bite, drinking the broth until not a single drop was left, practically tipping the bowl upside down. My dad saw and scoffed. You're a bottomless pit. I can make more if you're not full. Are you planning to lick the bowl clean? I wiped my mouth. That was enough. I want the same thing for breakfast tomorrow. 30 of them. No, 35. Fine, Your Highness. Now to go to bed. It was almost 11. I looked toward my grandparents' room. I missed them terribly, but they were already asleep. It could wait. I'd see them tomorrow. I had plenty of time now to be a good grandson. I brushed my teeth, went back to my room, and hit the books again. I was relieved to find that although it had been years since I'd graduated high school, my finance major in college and my data-heavy career meant I hadn't forgotten everything. But it would still take some time to get it all back. I finished another full practice test. It was almost 2 in the morning. My grandpa got up to use the bathroom and saw the light under my door. He pushed it open and whispered, My boy, still studying? Go to sleep. You can study tomorrow. Okay. I immediately dropped my pen, ran over, and threw my arms around him, nearly bursting into tears. My grandpa was surprised, then amused. Such a big boy, and still acting like a kid with his grandpa. He chuckled, lowering his voice. You need some money? I shook my head, hugging him tighter. No, I have plenty. I feel like I haven't seen you in a long time. I missed you. My grandpa laughed heartily, patting my back. My good boy. Go on, get to sleep. You're still growing. I was already 6 feet 1 inch, but in my past life, I kept growing until my sophomore year of college, ending up at 6 foot 2 inch. I couldn't slack off this time either. I immediately dove into bed and closed my eyes. My grandpa smiled and turned off the light for me. The next day, the weather was beautiful. I rode my bike to school, taking a shortcut through an alley near the school grounds. I saw Nora pinned against a wall by Jake, who was kissing her forcefully. Her eyes were red-rimmed and puffy, her steps unsteady. It was obvious what they'd been up to last night. I felt nothing. I turned my bike around and went another way. For the next 2 weeks, I studied like a man possessed, making my classmates miserable with my relentless pace. The teachers, who used to be on our case constantly, were now telling me to take it easy. Soon, it was time for the second round of mock SATs. I improved a bit from the first round, scoring a 1480. Not ideal, but I was confident I could do better next time. Nora was the opposite. She'd scored a 1300 on the first mock test. This time she plummeted to a 1050, the lowest in our class. Ever since she started dating Jake, they were practically joined at the hip. Everyone knew, but 0 people cared. We were all too busy with college apps to waste time on gossip, but it was starting to affect others' ability to study. Jake was a lost cause, and the teachers didn't bother with him. They just called Nora in for a talk. Her response was, "If I don't get into a good college, whatever. I'll take a gap year and audition for acting schools. I'll be a star and make millions." Hearing that, it clicked. She was reborn, too. No wonder she hadn't tried to contact me once in the last 2 weeks. Fine by me. The days blurred into a cycle of reviewing and test-taking. The third mock exam came around. This time, I jumped a full 80 points, scoring a 1560. My teachers looked at me like a gambler spotting a dark horse, their eyes shining. One patted me on the shoulder. "Excellent, excellent. Keep this up, and you've got a real shot at the Ivy League." He looked a little regretful. If my performance had peaked earlier, I could have been a shoo-in for early admission. In my previous life, I only got a 1520, missing out on the Ivies. I ended up at NYU, in the same city as Nora. But this time, Harvard was my only goal. My parents and grandparents were ecstatic when they heard my score. They made a huge celebratory dinner. "Sweetheart, studying is one thing, but don't put too much pressure on yourself. This score is already fantastic. Don't burn yourself out," my grandma said, reaching up to touch my face, which had gotten thinner. I bent my knees so she could reach more easily. "Grandma, just 1 more month of hard work, and I can get into Harvard. This is for my whole future." "Tsh." A sneer came from the doorway. I turned around. It was Jake. Yellow-dyed hair, loud shirt, earrings, tattoos covering his arms. He looked like a street punk. He had his arm around Nora, and he was looking at me with the eyes of Victor. Nora looked at me, too. It was the first time we'd properly seen each other since we were reborn, though she didn't know I was. She probably thought I was giving her the cold shoulder because I knew she was dating someone. She avoided my gaze and scurried inside her house. To me, Jake was a cockroach, a rat. Acknowledging him was beneath me. Without Nora in the picture, he didn't even have the right to speak to me. With applications due so soon, it wasn't worth the trouble. I closed the door. For pairs of eyes, my grandpa, grandma, mom, and dad were all staring at me. I felt my face flush. "What are you all looking at?" My grandpa patted my shoulder. "Ethan, don't be sad. Once you get into Harvard, you'll meet so many wonderful girls. Think bigger." I was speechless. "What do you see, sad? I'm happier than I've ever been. I'll find you a Harvard-educated granddaughter-in-law." My grandparents beamed, their eyes crinkling into slits. With only a month left, everyone was burning the midnight oil. I was going to bed at midnight and waking up at 5:30 a.m. I lost a ton of weight. All my classmates were the same, like tightly drawn bows. The teachers were like drummers, constantly beating the rhythm, terrified we'd lose momentum. Nora was not built for this kind of pressure. After 10 years of a carefree life, she was even less capable of handling hardship than she was the first time around. With no one pushing her, she completely gave up. She stopped doing homework and spent all her time messing around with Jake. This was the final sprint, and while she wasn't studying, other people were. The school called her parents. They called her dad. I was in the classroom, grinding through a practice test, when a thick English textbook flew through the air and hit me square in the nose. My entire nose went numb. Tears streamed down my face. Something felt wrong. I touched it, and my hand came away covered in blood. I looked up. Nora had thrown it. She was glaring at me. "Was it you? Did you snitch on me?" Chris, my desk mate, jumped up and stood in front of me, shouting, "You're spending every damn day in some cheap motel that charges by the hour. The whole school knows. Who the hell needs to snitch?" Faced with the mocking, contemptuous stares of the entire class, Nora finally seemed to wake up, standing frozen on the spot. I clutched my nose, waiting for the searing pain to subside. I picked up the book. Then I lunged at her and rained punches down on her face. I beat her until her own nose was gushing blood. I had fucking had enough. So much for men don't hit women. My own family had never laid a finger on me my entire life. What gave her the right? The other students were stunned. By the time they reacted and pulled us apart, Nora was dazed, her face also a bloody mess. The last shred of consciousness in her eyes was filled with terror and utter disbelief. Then both our families were called. My grandpa came for me. Her grandpa came for her. "Ethan, you're a boy. How could you hit my Nora like that?" "Mister." Lynn yelled at me the moment he saw me. My grandfather immediately jumped to my defense. "Didn't you hear? Your granddaughter started it. She's the one with no self-respect, a disgrace known to the whole school, and she blames my grandson for snitching. My grandson is busy trying to get into Harvard. He doesn't have time for your family's drama. I think you did it on purpose. You know your own granddaughter has no hope, so you try to ruin my grandson's chances. Absolutely shameless. She deserved to be hit. If you didn't hit her, I would have. I'd hit you too, you old fool who can't even raise a child properly. Two men in their 60s, a friendship of over 40 years, completely capsized today. But since we had both thrown punches, it was a mutual fight. With college applications just around the corner, her family was in the wrong to begin with, so we ended up settling. Her injuries were worse, so my family paid her medical bills, $3,000. Afterward, the school gave us both a half-day off and told us to write a 1,000-word apology letter. When my mom saw my face, swollen so much my eyes were just slits, she burst into tears. She and my grandma stood out in the community courtyard and cursed Nora out for over an hour, shaming the Lynn grandparents so badly they couldn't show their faces. They packed up and went to stay with Nora's dad. The entire neighborhood knew our families had a falling out. I didn't feel I was in the wrong. I downloaded an apology letter template from the internet and emailed it to the teacher. After resting for 2 hours, I went back to studying. A little while later, Nora's father showed up. He pointed at Nora and screamed, "You little bitch, born from a bitch. You've completely disgraced me. You're 18 now. I have no obligation to support you anymore. Get the hell out." He stormed off after his tirade. Mr. and Mrs. Lynn didn't come back either. Nora, her face wrapped in bandages, sat on her doorstep and cried. It was as if his words had shocked her back to reality. She seemed to finally understand that her family didn't love her. The impulsive arrogance she had since being reborn was gone, replaced by confusion and helplessness. She stared at our front door for a long, long time, looking utterly pathetic. But no one pitied her. My grandparents hated her guts. I had never been hurt so badly in my life. She had aimed for my head. A month before the most important exams of my life, she was trying to ruin me. She's a jinx. Stay away from her from now on, so she doesn't curse you, my grandma said angrily. My grandpa sent my dad out to buy liver. He lost so much blood, he needs to eat it for a week. I sat on the sofa with my swollen face while my grandma fed me watermelon. My grandpa peered through the peephole at the house across from ours. After about 10 minutes, he gasped softly and waved me over. I looked through with him and saw Jake had arrived. He and Nora were each carrying a large suitcase. They were leaving. Jake had transferred to our school from the South last semester, arriving with the demeanor of a punk. The school had tried to expel him several times, but his mother had begged and pleaded for them to let him stay. Nora thought he came from a single-parent home, but she didn't know the truth. His father had been sentenced to 10 years for armed robbery 3 years prior. That was the real reason he transferred here. This was something I had dug up in my past life after I discovered Nora's affair. So I had no need for revenge. She was already in a pit of fire. Besides, she loved him so much. She probably didn't mind. Nora, hauling 2 huge suitcases, walked out of the neighborhood with a boy, bold as brass. Before long, the whole community knew she had run off with a man. Mr. and Mrs. Lynn were informed the moment they set foot back in the neighborhood. Surprisingly, however, they didn't seem angry. Instead, they looked resolute, as if they had made a decision. Soon, I heard from my grandpa that Mr. Lynn had listed their house with a real estate agent and moved in with Nora's father. Our neighborhood was old, but it was in a prime location with good school zoning. The house sold in less than 2 weeks to a middle-aged couple with a sweet little girl just starting elementary school. Nora came back once and found strangers living in her house. She just stood there, lost, then walked away. My grandma shook her head. That child, look at how she's dressed. Her whole midriff is showing. Isn't she afraid of catching a cold? My mom replied, Ma, you can't say things like that in public anymore. People now have freedom to dress how they want. My grandma retorted, she has freedom to dress, and I have freedom to comment. And I say she looks improper and indecent. Thank God she didn't marry into our family, or she would have been the death of me. I quickly patted her back. Grandma, let's not talk about people behind their backs. You're right, she said. Your grandma is a woman of class. I won't embarrass my grandson. My life remained a simple back and forth between school and home. I heard Nora had a massive fight with her dad and completely burned that bridge. He even cut her off financially. Once, I went to the library to buy some practice exam books and saw her and Jake arguing on the street. Jake was pointing a finger at her face, yelling, "Everything you're wearing, everything you're using, everything you're eating, I paid for it. I'm supporting you. If you keep acting crazy, you could just get lost." Nora squatted on the sidewalk, sobbing her heart out. Then Jake was apologizing, kneeling, slapping his own face, swearing he'd change, begging for forgiveness. And just like that, they made up. The tears still wet on their faces, they started kissing passionately in the middle of the crowded street, oblivious to everyone around them. In moments like that, I felt like we existed on completely different planes of reality. I didn't understand it, but I respected her choices. I took a detour and walked away. Finally, exam week arrived. My whole family mobilized. My grandma and mom wore traditional dresses for good luck. My grandpa and dad held bouquets of sunflowers. They sent me off to the testing center like a soldier going to war. It had been 10 years since my last SATs. I'd long forgotten the questions, but I wasn't nervous at all. 3 months of high-intensity studying had made me more confident and composed than my first time around. 2 days later, the last exam was over. I capped my pen, checked my answer sheet one last time, and turned it in. Walking out of the testing center, I saw my family waiting for me. My eyes welled up. To live again. I wanted nothing more than to be with my family, happy and healthy. Son, my boy, are you tired? Hungry? Let's go. We're going to the Grand Fortune for a seafood feast. Grandpa hasn't touched his pension for months. Okay. They didn't ask how I did. They ordered a massive seafood dinner. After we finished eating, the table fell quiet. I poured a cup of tea for my grandparents. Don't worry, I said. Harvard is a sure thing. They'd seen my confidence when I walked out of the exam hall, and they believed me. They nodded, smiling. Good, good. Our son/grandson is definitely going to be a great success. Back home, we saw Nora curled up in a ball in the hallway, 2 suitcases standing beside her, fresh bruises on her face. What's she doing here? My grandma hesitated, about to go to her. After all, she had watched this girl grow up. She couldn't help but feel a pang of pity. Nora looked up, her eyes filled with tears. She called out, Mrs. Sharp, then looked at me. Mom, Dad, why don't you take Grandpa and Grandma upstairs first, I said. My parents looked at me, then at Nora. My mom said, all right, come up soon. Your father and I have no idea how to book tickets on our phones. Okay. Once they were gone, Nora spoke. Are you guys going on a trip? Yeah, I replied flatly. Nora wrung her hands. It was a nervous habit of hers. In the past, I would have immediately asked what was wrong and solved any problem she had. Now, I pretended not to notice. How did you do on your exams? She asked me. Do you need something? I asked back. Tears streamed down her face, a picture of pathetic beauty. Ethan, please help me. My grandparents are in a nursing home and won't see me. My dad disowned me. I have nowhere to go. My heart was stone. You don't have a home here either. Nora froze, her hands twisting even tighter. Her eyes were pleading, but seeing my unwavering indifference, she finally managed to say, in a voice full of shame, Could you lend me some money? Well, the little fairy who lived above the mortal world finally understood the importance of money. In our past life, she always thought she was so fortunate. Doting grandparents, a loving father, even a stepmother and stepbrother who tried to please her. All her friends envied her, but she never stopped to think why. It was because she was with me, tied to my bright future. It was because of the $250,000 I gave her family for our wedding and the $20,000 I gave them every year as a gift, not counting the other things she gave them. Her brother's $50,000 a year, private school tuition, I paid for that too. Her entire life of comfort was built on my back. I worked myself into the ground, and she had the audacity to say I had no life, that I couldn't give her the simple things. What's the matter now? Did Jake not pay the gas bill? No, not that I didn't have it. I just wouldn't lend it to her. Nora's head snapped up, her eyes wide with disbelief. You came back too. Of course I wouldn't admit it. If she knew we shared a past life, there's no telling how she'd try to entangle herself with me. I don't know what you're talking about. I can't help you. Find someone else. She was already broke. How was she going to afford acting school next year? That was one of the most expensive majors you could pursue. Besides, a place like Hollywood requires not just beauty, talent, and connections, but also extremely high emotional intelligence. Otherwise, you're just a lamb being led to the slaughter. Which of those boxes did she tick? It was a happy day. I had no desire to waste it on her. I turned and walked away without a second glance. Nora was a complicated person. She never directly asked for what she wanted. She expected others to offer it. So now, she'd just stare at my back, unable to utter a single word to beg or plead. She had been with me since we started dating, never worrying about a thing, never experiencing the harsh realities of the world. I, too, was once full of pride, but hadn't I eventually bowed to reality? I had wanted to go to grad school after my bachelor's, but I gave it up for a shot at a major corporation. The endless dinners sucking up to bosses and clients made me regret it. I shouldn't have been in such a hurry to succeed, only to become another cog in the machine. So, this time around, I wanted an easier life. And the first step was to cut out anyone who would only drain me. After I got home, I booked flights to Arizona. The next day, The 5 of us left for a family vacation. We spent over 2 weeks exploring the national parks and only came back the day before our exam scores were released. That night was our high school reunion. From my classmates, I learned that Nora had only shown up for the first day of exams. She quit on the second day. Maybe sitting in that exam hall, she finally faced reality. After leaving my apartment building that day, she had borrowed money from several classmates, scraped together $5,000, and went south to find her mother. Chris said, "Man, when you decide to cut someone off, you really cut them off." Impressive. Putting aside our childhood history, for the past 3 years, my classmates had all seen how I treated her. They couldn't understand her choice. But once a choice is made, you can't regret it. Not when you're young and dumb. People who've never hit rock bottom don't understand regret. After the reunion, I was waiting for my Uber when I saw Jake. In my past life, after I noticed something was off with Nora, it didn't take long to trace it back to him. I had a million ways to destroy him, but it wasn't necessary. His seduction of Nora had nothing to do with love. It was about my money. He had a selfish mother and a violent father. By choosing him, Nora had sealed her own fate. Right now, being a little poor was just the beginning. "Where's Nora?" he demanded. I shrugged. How would I know? Ever since you two started dating, I haven't spoken to her once. Jake's eyes were bloodshot. He looked like a caged animal. I could tell he actually did like Nora. So it was one of those tragic, push-and-pull romances. A real soap opera. I was happy now, and out of a principle of self-preservation, I didn't want any conflict with him. It wasn't about being scared. It was about him not being worth my time. Jake himself wasn't a problem. His family was a ticking time bomb. She had a falling out with her dad's family. I heard she went to find her mom. Jake pressed, "Where's her mom?" I heard she's somewhere in the South. I don't know where exactly. Probably only her own family would know. Jake turned to leave, then whipped back around. "Don't you like her? Why didn't you help her?" I waved my hands dismissively. "Don't be ridiculous. I'm not into her. I like smart girls. Did you forget we got into a fight? Our families hate each other now. From what I can see, she's crazy about you. Head over heels. You two are a match made in heaven. I wish you a long and happy life together. Never leave each other." That seemed to satisfy him. He left. The next day, my whole family was huddled around the computer, waiting to check my scores. As I typed in my student ID, my mom was shaking on my left, my dad on my right. Their trembling made me nervous. When the page loaded and the total score, 1580, appeared, my dad let out a whoop, grabbing me and lifting me into the air, nearly throwing out his back. My mom supported me from behind. "My amazing son, you got into Harvard." My grandpa slapped him with the palm of his hand. "Put him down. You'll drop my grandson." My grandma was wiping away tears. "My sweet boy, what do you want to eat? Tell grandma. I want grandma's fresh, homemade cheese ravioli." After that came the graduation parties, first ours, then our friends. It was the most carefree time of my life. We were still kids without a worry in the world, yet on the cusp of adulthood, like fledglings about to leave the nest, full of curiosity and a little trepidation about the wide world. I felt it too. It was because I'd lost it all once that I cherished it so much more now. After the parties, I got my driver's license with some friends. I heard Jake had caused a huge scene at Nora's dad's house, almost getting into a fist fight, but still didn't find out where she was. Later, he snuck into their gated community and took Nora's little brother. The family called the police, but when they found them, Jake was just playing video games with his brother-in-law, who was happily shouting "bro" at the top of his lungs. Nora's dad, terrified of him now, gave up Nora's mother's address just to get rid of the menace. Not long after, I saw a video of the two of them singing together online. All passion and drama. When it was time for college to start, my parents and grandparents all came with me to Boston for orientation. It wasn't because I was spoiled. It was because this felt monumental. We weren't just tourists. We were the family of a Harvard student. Seeing my grandparents posing for pictures by the university gate, their faces beaming with pride, happiness, and contentment, I couldn't hold back my tears. My dad clapped me on the back. "Good kid. I've never seen your grandpa this happy in his entire life. I'll make sure they're always proud of me." This time, I majored in law. I finished my undergrad, then went on to law school. Using my financial knowledge from my past life and a bit of foresight, I quickly earned my first fortune. By my senior year of college, I was financially independent and bought a place in Cambridge, another sprawling condo. I wanted to bring my parents to live with me, but they preferred our hometown of Riverbend, only visiting for short periods. So I bought them a large house near my condo. My grandparents fell in love with gardening, and I set my parents up with a franchise of a high-end fruit market, something to keep them busy without being too strenuous. It wasn't until I was about to graduate from law school that I met a girl I really liked. She was a history major, gentle and intelligent. and both her parents were professors at the university. After graduation, I landed a stable government job, and she continued on for her PhD. When I brought her home, my grandparents were so overjoyed they pulled out all the heirlooms they had saved over the years to give her as an engagement gift. It was clear how much they adored her. That evening, I went to my parents' room to discuss the engagement party. My dad said he'd already talked it over with her parents, and everything was taken care of. I didn't need to worry about a thing. Then he brought up Nora. She had gone south that year, but failed to find her mother. She and Jake made a little money live streaming. The next year, she came back to retake her exams and apply to performing arts schools, but failed. The year after that, she finally got into a local music college. But just before the semester started, she got pregnant. She went to a clinic to have an abortion in secret, but she started hemorrhaging. They had to notify her family, and that's how Jake's family found out. Jake went to Nora's father's house and raised hell, getting into a fight that triggered a stroke in Nora's grandfather, who was staying there. He didn't survive. Not long after, her grandmother passed away too. The two families became mortal enemies. I don't know what Nora was thinking, but she married Jake anyway. Less than a year later, he was dead, killed by his own father. It turned out that when his dad robbed that contractor years ago, the contractor was running an illegal operation and never reported it to the police. It was Jake's mom who couldn't resist flashing the new money, which led to her husband's arrest. So, the first thing his dad did when he got out of prison was go after his wife for revenge. But Jake, the devoted son, jumped in to protect his mother. In the struggle, he was accidentally killed. A knife sliced his carotid artery. He bled out before the ambulance arrived. After his death, Nora found out she was 2 months pregnant. Jake's mother knelt and begged her for 3 days straight to keep the baby. Nora's health had been poor since the hemorrhage, and she had a difficult pregnancy, but she eventually gave birth to a daughter. Now, she runs a small barbecue stand. I saw a picture in our old high school group chat. Someone had run into her. In the photo, she was with a small, skinny child. Nora herself had gained weight. Her skin was slack, and her temples were graying. She looked 10 years older than the rest of us. A world away from the glamorous, luxury-draped trophy wife she had been in our past life. But at least she was supporting herself. That's a kind of progress, isn't it? My mom sighed. The little girl is quite pretty. Looks just like her when she was little. Actually, after Jake died and his mother was pressuring her to have the baby, Nora had managed to get my email through an old classmate. She sent me a long, rambling message. She was hesitating, she said, because doctors told her that if she terminated this pregnancy, she'd never be able to have children again. If she kept it, at least she'd have a child. She asked me for advice. She reminisced about our past, saying she wished she could go back. It was incoherent. No wonder she dropped out of her exams. She'd returned all her knowledge to the sands of time. It was laughable. Go back. To what? What's the title of this story? The Billionaire Ex-Husband's Second Chance, where he falls for his cheating, broke, and infertile ex-wife carrying another man's baby? After 2 lifetimes, she hadn't learned a single thing. Still living in a fantasy. I wasn't dating because I was busy improving myself, making money, and planning my future. And I also knew she wasn't telling the whole truth. She kept Jake's child not just because of his mother's begging, but also because of her threats. Jake's death was ruled accidental manslaughter, and his mother provided a letter of forgiveness, so his father only got 10 years. He had his wife pass a message to Nora's family. If she dared to get rid of the baby, he'd kill her entire family when he got out. So, Nora's own father forced her to agree. Later, after the child was born, Nora's father grew more and more afraid and secretly hired an agency to arrange for him to immigrate. The owner of that agency happened to be my high school desk mate, Chris. I was an investor in his company. He was afraid I'd be fooled by Nora and get entangled with Jake's family. So he gave me a heads up. Nora didn't know. From the moment she got involved with Jake, she was doomed to be dragged into the abyss. Even being reborn couldn't save her, because rebirth gives you experience, not intelligence. Actually, she had no reason to be so scared. Jake's father had liver cancer and was given 6 months to live at most. He'd already been released on medical parole. His wife knew but deliberately didn't tell Nora. I didn't finish her email. I deleted it, blocked her, and had my parents and grandparents come live with me in Boston for half a year, until after her child was born. It's much better this way. We each got the lives we wanted. She has her simple things, her smoke and fire. And I have my soaring ambitions. Equals. An epilogue from Nora's perspective. The summer in Riverbend was brutal. Over 100 degrees during the day. At 4 in the afternoon, the air was still a suffocating blanket of heat. I was pushing my barbecue cart down a narrow alley when it jolted and the bamboo skewer stored inside the cart's belly tumbled out. I stopped. The entire package of skewers had landed squarely in a pile of dog crap. My daughter had been sick the last 2 days, and I'd been busy taking care of her, so my mother-in-law had been running the cart. The skewers ran out, and she didn't tell me. This was the last pack. To save money, I always bought them on Temu, where they were half the price of the wholesale market. If I bought them at the supermarket now, they'd be at least 3 times as expensive. I bent down and picked up the package. I carefully peeled off the plastic wrapping. The stench of the dog crap was overwhelming. Someone got on my sandal, then smeared onto my foot. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I leaned against the wall and burst into tears. This wasn't the life I was supposed to have. In my past life, at this very moment, Ethan and I were already married. He had been promoted to director and bought an entire floor of a luxury high-rise, putting both our names on the deed. He had a black card with a monthly limit of $1 million, which he let me use as I pleased. Designer bags, shoes, and skincare products slowly filled my walk-in closet. Even a small tube of hand cream cost more than an average person's monthly salary. I used to be grateful for the lavish life Ethan gave me. When did that change? Was it when he forgot our wedding anniversary time after time? Or when, for my birthday, he just carelessly gave me a bag in a style I already owned? Did he even love me? I was always asking myself that question. The hardest time of my life was junior year of high school. He forced me to study all day, every day. I want to tell him to stop so many times, but I was too afraid. My grandmother had told me he was my best option in life, that I had to keep up with him or at least not fall too far behind. Finally, I got into a top-tier university. It wasn't the same one as Ethan, and we barely saw each other. It felt like a liberation, until one day, an off-campus event, I ran into him. He was hosting a group of what looked like foreign executives. Surrounded by tall, blonde-haired foreigners, his dark hair and dark eyes stood out as he spoke fluently and confidently, not outshone in the slightest. I heard my own heartbeat thumping in my ears. For the first time, I realized I was in love with him. After that, we began a whirlwind romance. I brought him snacks and fruit. I knit him scarves. He was studying and working part-time, but whenever he had a spare moment, it was all mine. I was so happy then. After graduation, I didn't want to work, and he didn't say anything. He received an offer from a multinational corporation. He had originally planned to go to grad school, but the opportunity was too good to pass up. When my family heard, they pushed us to get married. So, he gave up grad school and went into the corporate world, dealing with Wall Street elites. In his first month, he landed a huge project and made over $3 million. Soon, our wedding was on the calendar. The fantasy ceremony was decorated with expensive imported flowers. Money flowed like water, turning into thick stacks of bills. The envious looks from my classmates filled me with a sense of pride and satisfaction I'd never felt before. It was my grandfather who told me to ask for the $250,000 gift. He said it was the greatest measure of a man's sincerity toward a woman. Ethan agreed without a second's hesitation. My father withdrew the cash, and the stacks of red bills on the coffee table were a magnificent sight. I thought I'd seen my value in his heart. I never expected that when he came to pick me up on the wedding day, my stepmother would suddenly demand another $50,000. I thought Ethan would be just as decisive as before, throwing the money in her face to defend my honor. Instead, he looked at me with a coldness I had never seen before. "Nora, is this your idea?" I wanted to say no, but his attitude infuriated me. He was embarrassing me on the most important day of my life. As we stood at a stalemate, his grandfather called. I don't know what was said, but Ethan told his groomsmen to get back in the cars. "If we can't get the bride, we'll leave without her." He actually did that. My grandfather realized they had pushed too far and came out to smooth things over. The wedding continued, but for the rest of the day, I couldn't manage a single smile. I was the ugliest bride. That incident became a long, deep scar between us. Every time I was unhappy, I would think about it over and over. Until I met Jake again. He would watch the stars with me, take me to find hidden gems in back alley restaurants. He was like a passionate fire, and I melted in his heat. When Ethan's call came, I was in a daze. Even though I was with Jake, I had never thought about divorcing Ethan. I knew that everything I had came from him, that I was completely dependent on him for my survival. But I also knew Ethan would never forgive me. And he didn't. He was so calm, as if I were just a dirty rag he couldn't wait to throw away. His eyes were so cold, so disgusted. There was no room for discussion. My pride was shattered, but I didn't believe he could truly give up on all our years together. He had once wanted me by his side so badly that he spent his own precious study time on me. He spent money on me like it was nothing, and he turned down countless other beautiful women for me. I believed I was unique and irreplaceable in his life. He would regret this. And when he came crawling back, I wouldn't forgive him easily. I got in the car, fuming, and texted Jake, telling him Ethan had already hidden all his assets. Just then, a message came from my dad. He was asking why I had transferred all the money out of the account I kept with him. I hadn't. It must have been Ethan. In a moment of blind rage, I grabbed the steering wheel. I never imagined I would be reborn. Without hesitation, I ran straight to Jake. I was lost in a beautiful dream until I threw that book and hurt Ethan. But I never, ever thought he would hit me. He actually hit me. How could he hit me? He beat me awake. After that, my life began to collapse, spiraling downward at incredible speed. My grandparents abandoned me. My father gave up on me. I had no home. I thought Jake was my salvation, but he was the abyss. The first time I saw Jake's father, I knew. The person who transferred the money from my account in my past life wasn't Ethan. It was Jake, because the person who drove the truck that crashed into me and Ethan was his father. I was wrong. So terribly wrong. But when I looked back, Ethan was gone. I swallowed my pride and begged everyone I knew, finally getting his email address. I hoped he would save me from this hell. Instead, he blocked me again. In my moments of helplessness, I wished that Ethan had been reborn too. He was invincible. With him, I lived in an ivory tower. My biggest worry was that he didn't have time to eat dinner with me, but I could call any friend, go to any restaurant, and just swipe his card. When he came home at night, he would even ask me how the restaurant was. Yes, he did care about me. He remembered my favorite restaurants and would load up their membership cards with enough money to make me a VIP wherever I went. But I lost him. My dad has also immigrated. I have lost all hope. Alone, I have no way of fighting Jake's mother or his father in prison. I can already see the end of my life. I cleaned the dog crap off my foot and finally made it to my spot. But the old street was buzzing with a joyful energy. The owner of the flower shop next door was moving bouquets outside. Delivery guys on scooters were lined up from one end of the street to the other. The flower shop across the street was the same. I had just set up my small tables and plastic stools when I heard the owner of the fried rice stall say, "The flower shops hit the jackpot today." All their flowers were bought out by the Sharp's Fruit Market. Sharp's Fruit Market, the store Ethan's parents owned. They had over a dozen locations in this area alone. But they didn't run the stores themselves. They hired managers and staff. I had gone looking for them a few times, but every employee said they didn't have the owner's contact information. I knew then that they didn't want to see me. Why would they buy so many flowers? Was there a special occasion? A guess formed in my mind, but I refused to believe it. Yet the fried rice vendor's words drilled into my head. Their son is getting engaged today. I heard they originally ordered special flowers from overseas for the wedding, but this morning, the fiancé wasn't feeling well. They went to the hospital and found out she's pregnant. A double blessing. So they bought up all the flowers on these few streets. I heard the fiancé went to Harvard too. My God, how smart is that kid going to be? Not just smart, but born rich too. I heard this morning, old Mr. Sharp went to the bank and bought out all their gold bars. They're either for his new granddaughter-in-law or for his great-grandchild. The Sharp family is so blessed. They're about to have 4 generations under one roof. Yes, the Sharp family was so blessed. Ethan got into Harvard, landed a great government job, a future without limits. His parents' business was booming. His grandparents were living long, healthy lives when in my past life. Wait, I looked up, a shocking realization dawning on me. So that was it. That was it. Ethan was reborn too, but he didn't want me anymore. My husband, he really didn't want me anymore.